All right, you're very welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo. We'll be talking about the Ireland women's as they head into Tuesday's final Nations League group game against Slovenia in Cork. The boys in green who will be in friendly action this Friday, and we'll be reacting to the Champions League final and the last round of men's LOI games before the mid-season break. As ever, we're on RTÉ.ie, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And a little bit of housekeeping now. Republic of Ireland v Slovenia in the Women's Nations League is live on RTÉ2 and RTÉ Player from 5:30 on Tuesday, along with live commentary on 2FM. And then on Friday, the boys in greens friendly against Senegal will be live on RTÉ2 and RTÉ Player from 7. Now, I'll be joined by Rachel Graham and my colleague Anthony Pyne, who's down in Cork a little later on, but delighted now to be joined by Alan Cawley and Richie Towell. Lads, how are you on this sunny bank holiday?
I'm good, Raf.
Thanks,
Very
Alan.
good. Very, very good. Now, we're going to before we kick off into the Champions League, we're going to look at things from your eyes, Alan, from Saturday night very, very briefly, just to get a taste of what the atmosphere was like in Munich. All right, so that is just a brief example of the scenes after the match as PSG trashed Inter Milan 5-0 in the Allianz Arena in Munich, and Alan Cawley was right there, right in the thick of it. So, Alan, obviously you flew in. Can you just take us through the build-up in terms of all the way into getting to the ground as well?
Yeah, so amazing weekend, Raf. As you say, we headed over on Friday evening. The young lad was with me as well. So it's become a bit of a tradition. We went last year as well to the Champions League final in Wembley, but I can safely say this was far better. And that's not to say last year wasn't great, but the experience we had over the weekend was just incredible. But we flew in Friday evening into Munich airport. I'd never been before. Fabulous airport as well. Got to our hotel. Then on Saturday morning, we headed off. We actually stayed in a different hotel, more central. And on Saturday, then once we got checked in, got sorted, headed out to the ground. We went into town first just to kind of sample the atmosphere, and it was actually all Inter Milan fans everywhere. Now, I'm not sure if there was segregation going on in the city centre, possibly so, but we were surrounded by Italians everywhere, and they were creating a great atmosphere in town as well. Headed out to the ground fairly early, Raf, and we were out at the ground from about 6 o'clock. The game was until 9 German time. So again, just to sample the atmosphere, got into the stadium around probably about an hour and a half before the match. We were outside the stadium, and I'd never been to the Allianz before, and just it was almost like this big kind of bubble in front of you, an incredible stadium from the outside. So we were obviously kind of very much looking forward to what it was going to look like on the inside as well. And as soon as we got in, the PSG fans were kind of close to us, as you can see from the video there. They were to the right of us behind the goal. So I think we were in the right end as well in terms of the atmosphere. And that was my little lad you saw in the video as well, and dressed head to toe in PSG gear. But he was absolutely buzzing for it, knew all the chants, all the TikTok things to follow nowadays, Raf. So he was able to tell me all about that, an old fogey like me, about the chants and what goes on. So right in the thick of it. And I have to say, before a ball was even kicked, the PSG fans were absolutely amazing from start to finish. A good hour before the match, they were in full voice, and they just never let up. And then obviously when the game kicked off, they had started the game so well too. I'm sure we'll get into the details of the match,
Yeah.
but once the game kicked off, as I said, they just never let up. Obviously, they were helped by the fact that there was goals going in left, right and centre for them. But just in terms of the atmosphere that they created, and I mentioned we were in amongst last year, kind of down towards the Borussia Dortmund end, and they were brilliant as well last year. But the PSG fans took it to a whole new level of kind of atmosphere from what I had seen before. It was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and then just kind of as it plays out as well, is it a case like the Inter fans on the other end are, quieting down as it goes on, and obviously then the PSG fans, as we got a little bit of a sample of it, are just like they don't stop, and then obviously after the game as well, is it just kind of the same thing as well? Like this is their first Champions League, so it must be raucous.
Yeah, and I'd been to a PSG game before away to AC Milan, and AC Milan had always been kind of the barometer for me in terms of atmosphere in the San Siro. Best place I've been for a game anyway, and we were there a couple of times. But one of them was against PSG, and the San Siro away fans are literally up on a roof, up kind of on the very top, and it's hard to kind of see them even, let alone hear them. But the night we were in the San Siro, the PSG fans created some racket. So I was kind of expecting big things from them in terms of the atmosphere, but they kind of totally totally blew us away really in terms of what they created on the night. And as you say, I know it was their first final, but it was just absolutely amazing. And it was almost like they had these lads at the front with megaphones orchestrating what everyone else was to do and start the chants and almost like orchestrating everything. So it was incredible. Now, the Inter fans were in full voice before it as well to a point, but once the game started, I don't think they ever got a chance to get themselves going because they were 2 down, as you know, after 20 minutes. So it just carried on from there. I was actually sitting beside 3 Inter Milan fans, this older man, lovely man next to me, and we were kind of chatting amongst the match as well. Once the third goal went in, that was it. They were up and gone. So they never really got a chance. And Italian fans are good, as you know, in terms of atmosphere as well. But they just never got a chance, Raf. And PSG totally kind of blew them out of the water in terms of atmosphere. And it was an experience, I have to say, without even the football side of things. Just what the fans were creating was incredible. In a brilliant stadium as well. I think the atmosphere, the stadium lends itself to a good atmosphere as well, because it was my first time in the Allianz Arena and it was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and good to see Brian Kerr as well, who I think, as we spoke about off air there, he does go to a lot of major finals. I think even as far back as the 1966 World Cup final as well, apparently.
Yeah, our own Mr. Football, of course, had to be there as well. So we were chatting to Brian afterwards, got a nice photo with him as well. But I think, yeah, Brian has been to the last kind of 10, 15 Champions League finals, he'd tell you himself. So that's the tradition I'm trying to start now, Raf. I've a long way to go yet.
Well, you've many years to try and catch up on him as well. But Richie, as Alan said, the PSG fans blew the Inter fans away in terms of what happened in the stadium, was very much helped by the performance on the pitch from pretty much that first kickoff where they just almost rugby style kicked it into touch, and it was almost like a thing of, we're going to be playing the game in your half, and there's not much you're going to be able to do about it.
Oh, it was so impressive, wasn't it? We spoke about it last Monday, didn't we, Raf? We didn't know whether the youth and the exuberance of that was going to go in PSG's favour, or whether the calmness and the maturity of the Inter Milan team was going to take over. But PSG were incredible. They were, and you know what? One of the most impressive things for me is all their ages. Like this for this team, like looking at them over this whole campaign, I don't know who's going to stop them in years to come, because you see the likes of Doué, 19, the boy who came on and scored was only 18, Barcolo, 22, Vitinha, Neves, they're all really, really young players there. When you see the level of maturity in their performances, it's going to be scary to think where Luis Enrique is going to be able to take this team. It was also amazing for PSG to win it for him. Obviously, everybody knows what happened to his daughter. Anybody with kids, it really will hit you hard. It will. Especially myself, I have two young daughters. So to see him winning for her and the T-shirt after the game and the banner that the fans had, it was that little bit extra special for him. And I was absolutely delighted to see them win. And here, look, they absolutely deserved it. And do you know what? It was 5-0. It could have been more. Raf. They were absolutely incredible on the night. I actually mentioned Vitinha last Monday as a player who was the standout player in the whole campaign for me. And I'm sure, as Alan will tell you, he was at the game. He just controlled the whole game from start to finish. He did his ball for the fourth goal, his driving one for the third goal. He was incredibly well. So listen, PSG were absolutely amazing on the night. And it's probably, for Inter Milan now, they probably need a massive, massive rebuild, because as we said last Monday, it's a bit of an aging team, it is. So I think with the result that happened and the fashion that it was, they're going to have to do a massive rebuild now there.
Yeah, the Vitinha example in a way, Richie, as well. Sometimes when a player doesn't make it in the Premier League, they're almost kind of written off, and yet he's kind of proven that, yeah, okay, it didn't really work out at Wolves, but he's clearly a world-class player, and he was superb. As you said, he ran the show completely.
It's absolutely wild, isn't it? And I always say that, like, obviously, even with my football academy now, I have some kids come in to me and they say, oh, my manager's not playing me, I don't get picked. And he's a perfect example. Some managers like a specific type of player, and other managers prefer a specific type of player as well. And for someone like him, all right, it didn't work out at Wolves, but just to have that self-composure, self-determination, and just keep doing what you're doing, trust in your routine, trust in what you do, because the cream always rises to the top. And you can see with his performances, especially this season, if somebody had said to you a couple of years ago, the lad who can't get a game for Wolves is going to be the best player in the Champions League campaign and absolutely dominate a game at Anfield, dominate the Champions League final, you would have said, stop it, let's be realistic here. But that's exactly what he's gone and done, and it's a great advertisement for any young player that has got any setbacks. So I've had loads of setbacks in my career, and it's how you handle them setbacks. If you want to take them on board, learn from it, or else it can put you under. And he's absolutely learned from everything what's gone on in his previous clubs, and he's taken it on now, and he's just gone on to new heights. And look, he's still really, really young player. He still has loads more to give. He can be that. We haven't really had that type of Xavi, Iniesta player over the last couple of years. He can be that player that dominates that position for the next number of years to come. Like.
Yeah, and he's symbolic another way, Alan, as well, in the sense of the direction PSG have gone in terms of they're still signing stars, but it's a kind of different layer of it. It's kind of interesting. Luis Enrique, the last time he won the Champions League with Barcelona in 2015, he did have a superstar front three. You had Messi, you had Suarez, you had Neymar, and then obviously PSG kind of had 2/3 of that, and then you add in Mbappe. They drop all of that. They win a Champions League. But is it a case maybe Barcelona just have this kind of identity? Nobody's going to be bigger than the club, and PSG just haven't got to that point up until obviously they've won it now?
Yeah, I think to be fair with Enrique, it's up to the manager really to put their imprint on things, Raf, and I think that's what we've seen with him. Now, the whole project, we can get into a debate about that. I wouldn't be for that in terms of obviously what it's doing to football and I suppose effectively it's a state that's won the Champions League, as we know, state ownership, but and they're still spending money. But I can separate the football end and what Enrique is doing from that, because when you look at them on Saturday and the imprint he's put all over the team, in terms of the most impressive thing for me, and something that Richie would be big on as well, I'm sure, out of possession, the work rate and the dynamism and the energy that they played with was absolutely incredible. And it's one thing to have all the technical superiority, which obviously they had in Vitinha and the likes of these boys and Dembele, Kvaratskhelia, all these lads who were technically gifted, but the energy and the running power and the dynamism, as I said, particularly in that midfield three. Hakimi, a right full, he was playing like an inside right kind of forward, never stopped the whole night. So I love what Enrique has brought to it, and we've all seen the clips on social media of him sitting down with Mbappe and basically saying, look, you need to run and work, like on the ball you're brilliant, but out of possession he's a liability. And that's effectively, as you say, with Messi, Neymar, these players that the project they once had, and they weren't really getting anywhere with the likes of those great players because they wouldn't do the work off the ball. Whereas you look at what they have now, and there was a brilliant example of it, Raf. And I actually remember pointing out to a lad sitting beside me, they were 4-0 up at one stage. I think it was the 72nd minute, it could have been. But at one stage, the right full, or it was Dumfries, I think, took off down the right-hand side. And Kvaratskhelia must have ran about 70 yards to track him back and win a tackle. And that's basically typifies everything that's good about PSG. So you can have all the quality on the ball, and they have all that. But yet, out of possession, they're amazing. And you mentioned about the kickoff as well, and setting their stall out. Like, it's rare that you would see a team of that quality literally kick it out of play and pin Inter Milan in from the kickoff. And that was that was the pattern set in the game, that they were going to press them so high. Dembele, who was another one who was kind of on the fringes during that previous regime, and I always looked at him as a kind of a nearly kind of player, had all the ability but never really did it. Whereas you look at him now, and he kind of is the one starting to press on the keeper, never gave the goalkeeper a minute, the amount of times he was running and pressing him, and then they were winning the ball back in the likes of those midfield positions and just doing their thing on the ball. So it's the energy that they played with as well was absolutely incredible. And as much as Inter Milan, they are an aging team, but they just weren't allowed play either, Raf. Like, they were suffocated all over the pitch on top of the technical ability. So when you combine the two of those things together, as Richie said earlier about where this team can go, like, it's a force to be reckoned with, because it's one thing to be so good technically, but if you're the best at running as well, and your power and all those kind of stats, it's fairly ominous for the other teams.
Yeah, you mentioned that debate in terms of what PSG's win symbolises, and Miguel Delaney in The Independent, he had a passage, and like it's part of a wider piece, obviously, that covers all of this, and it's an area that he's kind of covered quite well over a long period of time. But he says you only have to consider how Inter are true football royalty, having previously won this competition 3 times and are still the 14th richest club in the world, and yet typically owned by an asset management fund themselves. There's still an immense gap between them and PSG. Inter's entire revenue of £327 million is just over half of PSG's last reported wage bill, not revenue, and it showed. So obviously PSG just have vast sums that they can pull from. So it's not this big romantic victory, aside from the players and the manager and everything else, and obviously the fans, that aside. But It's interesting just looking back, the last five Champions League winners, Alan. If you take Real Madrid out of it, who are royalty, then you have City, Chelsea, and PSG. So three clubs that would generally be lumped together when it comes to ownership models. So what does it say to you that that's what it takes to win it? That you need to be sort of, to have that level of wealth or that sort of ownership model. Obviously, there are clubs like Atletico Madrid have done well at certain times. Arsenal got close as well, but that it takes those three clubs really, it has taken that model to get where they are.
Yeah, I think it just symbolises where we are with football at the moment. And to be fair to Miguel, the book that he's written, State of Play, I've read good chunks of it, and he's certainly onto something, and he has a point. It's clear for everybody to see those stats back that up as well, in terms of the spending power of those clubs. So in one sense, that's what I'm saying, Raf. That whole project, I wouldn't be a fan of, because for I suppose the beautiful game that we grew up loving, or the smaller club, if you like, trying to create those fairy tale romanticism stories, it's getting harder and harder and harder for those clubs. But on the football end of what maybe Guardiola can do as a coach, or what Enrique can do as a coach, I can certainly get behind that kind of stuff. Now, there's still people, like, I think a lot of it, because of, and Richie touched on it, about the story with Enrique and the kid and all that, and of course everybody wants to support that end and see him do well, and he comes across as such a powerful figure as well when he speaks. But they're still spending money, plenty of money, Raf, and unfortunately, the world we live in nowadays, it's getting more and more like that. I'm not sure how you stop that. I would be very much, as you say, the Inter Milan thing, it's getting harder and harder for the likes of them. I watch a good bit of Serie A. I was looking at Napoli last week, and obviously, to be fair to Inter on the football end of it, it wasn't just, I suppose, the gulf is massive in money wise, but they were still trying to win the league up until last Friday, and they looked exhausted even in the game the other night. And it's one thing to play against PSG fresh, but try and play against that team when you've, after having a hard season as well with some aging players. They didn't really have any chance the other night. But it is getting harder and harder for the clubs. I'm not sure in terms of how that stopped. It's a lot bigger issue than what I suppose me, you, and Richie can try and figure out and sort out. And it is worrying. It has to be concerning. But unfortunately, money talks, and that's at all levels of the game. You see the big clubs in this country, in our domestic league, the biggest budgets, they win the leagues as well. It's not just in terms of the elite level of Champions League. It's happening all over, Raf, unfortunately. And as I said, it's not something that we're going to solve. But I certainly, as I said, I wouldn't be a fan of those projects, and the three that you pointed out. Money has bought them everything that they've won, those three clubs that you say. But certainly in terms of the football end, I can totally get behind that.
Yeah, and Richie, as you said, and I suppose the final point on the Champions League final, this PSG team on paper look like they're here to stay. When you look at the age profile of the team, and also they're always going to be in the Champions League because they don't really have a domestic competitor for the most part. Any club that's a near competitor is probably 20 points behind on average per season. But sometimes I think there have been times where, like, that Barcelona team came along, we kind of thought this is what football is going to be. They're going to dominate for a long period. Doesn't always happen. So there's Real Madrid are there at the moment, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Arsenal, Liverpool. I guess it's going to, like, next season's Champions League will be massively exciting, especially if maybe PSG, after getting over the line, maybe drop off ever so slightly.
It's going to be very interesting as well. Obviously, the owner now, they're either winning that Champions League. Are they going to pump even more money into it to try and retain it? They're either getting a little taste of what that success is like. Obviously, look, they win the league every single year they do, and they probably had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because everybody calls it a farmers' league. You even hear some of the people that was speaking after the game, the French people, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, it's just a farmers' league, the team that's at their winning." So that you can see that's hurting them a little bit as well in that sense. So yeah, look, the manager, with the manager that's there, I think the culture that he's after creating, I don't think they're going to let up. I think you can see all the players, as Alan pointed out, they're doing all the hard work at all stages of the game. I even noticed when Inter Milan tipped off 4-0 and 5-0, as soon as they tipped off, PSG just went boom, straight on them. They're already winning 4 and 5-0, so that just goes to show the mentality that Luis Enrique is after instilling in them. Listen, it's absolutely incredible. I love everything what Luis Enrique stands for. I love how he plays the game. I love his mannerisms and how he handled himself. And you can see that every single player is fighting for him every single minute of the game. One of my favourite things from the whole game was when the 18-year-old came on and scored. The whole bench left. Everyone ran down to him. I'm sure Alan would have had a bird's eye view of it. They all sprinted down to him. It then, after it all kind of settled down a little bit, it panned back over to the bench. Some of the coaches were crying with the emotion of having a young kid from the academy come up and score in the Champions League final. And that doesn't happen because of money. Like, we can speak about teams you see Manchester United, they've pumped money into it for years and years, and they have no culture. Listen, they haven't got the right players in there. You see what Luis Enrique is that they're bringing in, and it's a proper culture where all the players are there for each other. And if he stays, this team is going to be really, really hard to stop over the next few years.
Yeah, especially if they start actually making a point of using that academy, because like Paris and the suburbs, like they're sitting on a gold mine of talent that always ends up playing elsewhere. But if they take the best of it, obviously, it'll be the best for them. But we're going to talk League of Ireland, the boys in green shortly. But first, it's time to talk the girls in green, who play Slovenia and Cork on Tuesday off the back of a late 2-1 win in Turkey. All right, delighted to be joined now by Rachel Graham and Anthony Pyne, who is down in Cork. How are you both?
I'm really good, Raf. How are you?
Good stuff. And now we're going to be looking ahead to the Slovenia game, Tuesday Slovenia game, which is taking place at Park Equipe tomorrow. But first off, we're going to be reacting to the Republic of Ireland's 2-1 win over Turkey in their penultimate Nations League group game, with Emily Murphy's late winner making the difference there. Now, overall, the performance, there were bits that we're going to kind of go into very shortly, but Katie McCabe, Ireland captain, wasn't overly happy with all aspects of it, as she told Tony O'Donoghue.
We got the result, and that's what matters in the end. But for us, from a performance point of view, we have to be miles better going into Tuesday. I felt we didn't move the ball quick enough, we didn't move Turkey quick enough, and allowed them to kind of get in the game, and some sloppy mistakes. Just gives them that sniff to go forward. So, for us, obviously, it's a big one to rest and recover. But as I said, we need a massive improvement if we're going to beat Slovenia on Tuesday.
All right, so Katie McCabe there speaking to Tony O'Donoghue, and also we'll have a short clip of Carla Ward very shortly. But first off, in terms of the press conference today, what was said, Anthony, in terms of addressing Friday's overall performance?
You know, even after Friday's game where they won thanks to a couple of late goals, it's always... You know, she has a very clear philosophy and style and way of playing. And if things go wrong, she just wants to do that better, do the basic principles of how she wants to play better. So passing the ball more quickly, being more compact. She spoke about the shape being a little too open, the lines between players being too large, gaps in certain parts of the pitch, which allow Turkey, and we've seen this with other teams throughout the campaign, to kind of play around Ireland at times. So she's not going to stray away from that. And, it was put to her that the Slovenia manager, after the game in Koper, he said, like, look, I knew what they were going to do. And, even there was a little break in play halfway through the first half, we anticipated how they were going to change things. So he kind of suggested that he had Carla Ward's number and had her well sussed. But she didn't seem too fazed by that. I think she just thinks, well, look, everybody knows how I play. Anyone who's looked at her coach career over the last 8 years knows what she brings to the table. But if the players execute the plan the way she wants them to, then, it should be hard to stop. But look, I think Ireland have stating the obvious here, it's a big ask from tomorrow to beat this Slovenia team by 4 clear goals, which is what they need to do. I won't get into the nitty gritty of it. Simple short answer is that they need to win by 4 clear goals. That will do it for them, because they'll have scored more goals than Slovenia. It will come down to that criteria. So win by 4 goals, but that's a massive ask. These are a good side. They really are a good side. A coming team, core players who've been playing in the Champions League this season with good clubs across Europe and in Germany and Italy. And we haven't really seen any evidence in this campaign that Ireland are capable of going and playing a decent team like this and scoring 3, 4, 5 goals against them. We just haven't seen it. So it's a big ask. I thought and maybe kind of hoped Ireland would go more direct tomorrow night. I think even if you see where the 2 goals came against Turkey, it was a long throw in and a long ball from Katie McCabe that led to the goals. Turkey had looked quite comfortable for a lot of the game. So I hope maybe they would tweak things and just make that decision and they might do. We won't know until tomorrow night. She played her cards close to her chest, but I suspect that she'll tell her team or her players to stick to the plan that we've seen over the last couple of months, and maybe just try and improve the quality of their play with the ball and tighten up without it. But yeah, a big ask, Raf.
Yeah, and at least they're going in with a victory, I suppose, against Turkey, Rachel. But overall, the positive is the win. But there's a lot of questions at the same time, almost as many questions as answers so far from that performance.
Yeah, and look, obviously the most important thing was the win, and that's what they got. So that's the main kind of takeaway from the game. But I feel it's kind of the same narrative now after every time we win a game, where it's, look, we've got the win, but it hasn't been the most convincing or the most comfortable win. And look, I get, these so-called weaker teams, have gotten better in the last few years, but we've also got better in the last few years, and we have players playing at really good levels. So I don't think we can, keep saying that as an excuse, because we are improving too. And look, I don't think it was all doom and gloom. I think there was some passages of play that were good, and we moved the ball really well, but it's always just in passages. It's never for the full 90 minutes or the full duration of the game, where we let sloppiness kind of creep in and we give the ball away cheaply, or we make the wrong decision in the final third. And even the goals that we got, it's two pieces of luck for the goal. It's an own goal for the first one, and then if the centre half doesn't slip, we don't get the second one. And look, Emily Murphy takes the goal really well. She takes that extra second to compose herself, and it's a really good finish. But there is an element of luck before that game, or before that chance. And I think, we are conceding a lot of chances to these so-called weaker nations, which is a bit worrying. And I think the biggest takeaway, if we don't beat Slovenia by 4 goals, and we do go into that playoff, it's how vulnerable we look when we are attacking. And you could see we were trying to win the ball high out the pitch, and when it doesn't work out, it's, a long ball, and we do get caught out with it. And even our back line, it's not the quickest. So, if a ball gets in behind us and we're high up, it's a real struggle for us to get back. And you've seen that in the Turkey game. It's where the goal comes from. And when we played Slovenia the last time, that seemed to be a problem as well. So yeah, look, it's overall, it's a win. It's a good win to come back from 1-0 down, but they're definitely, I don't know if it's papering over cracks, would you call it, but there's definitely, issues that we need to get right. If not for Slovenia, then for the playoff.
And in terms of the vulnerability to the counter-attack that you mentioned, especially off turnovers high up the pitch, what's the easiest way to tweak that? Is it a personnel thing in terms of getting a message across, or is there like a tactical tweak, maybe having an extra midfielder sort of sitting deeper, or some other adjustment that can be made?
Yeah, look, I think the best thing to do is, win the ball. If you can, we need to probably press a bit better. It was kind of like, not half effort, but we could have probably pressed it a bit better, and then it doesn't even go fully all the way. So it's maybe a bit of cleverness where, right, we might need to foul someone here and get us back behind. But I just think with the personnel that we have, I don't know if we have really quick centre half, so it's not a case of just swapping in and out. It's more, if we are going to win the ball back up high, we have to win it. And if not, maybe do we just drop a bit deeper before we go and try and press the ball.
Yeah, and Carla Ward was also speaking to Tony O'Donoghue after the match on Friday, and he did ask her about the slower starts to games, and this is what she had to say.
We've started slow in almost every game under you since you came in, and I know you've wanted to change that, but it happened again today. I think it was 32 minutes before the first shot on target.
Yeah, look, it's something we've got to keep addressing. We've got to keep trying to work out why, and it's something we spoke about before the game. Let's not wait till half time to, adjust and go after things. We have to start brighter, and we definitely listen. We can't wait for 45 minutes against Slovenia on Sunday to be at them. So there's going to be a lot of looking at that. We've got to dissect it. We've got to get into it. We've got to have some honest conversations about how we start bright. But listen, this group's hungry, as you see. They don't want to roll over. They want to go and. We've got 2 bites of the cherry starting on Tuesday, and I have no doubt that they'll want to start bright.
And there's Carla Ward there, Rachel. What would you put the slow starts down to? Because it took about half an hour until Lucy Quinn decided, kind of by herself, to go and have a crack from distance, and actually almost caught out the goalkeeper with it as well. It wasn't until then that really Ireland started really playing on the front foot.
Yeah, look, we obviously, 30 minutes is a long time to go before you get your first kind of shot on goal, and it was a shot on distance, so it wasn't even an out and out, really good chance. But I don't really know what you'd put it down to. I just feel sometimes maybe do we let the opposition set the standard of the game and we kind of play at their level, because we've seen that we've obviously lost, when we went to the Group A league, we did lose the games, but there was times where we were defending really well and playing quicker, and sometimes when we do play them weaker teams, it's a bit slower, and when we do have the ball, we play at a bit of a slower pace, and sometimes you can just let the opposition set the tempo of the game. It's something we probably need to get out of. But look, I think if we want to win by 4 goals on Tuesday, we have to be straight out of the traps. You're probably going to have to get 1 or 2 goals in the first half, definitely 1 at least, I would say. So I don't know whether it's something to do with the warm-up that they're doing, maybe if they're a bit sluggish going into the start of the game, but I just think sometimes it can be a mentality thing where you let the opposition set the level of the game.
Yeah, and I suppose, Anthony, you mentioned the context of the group as well, at the top, just in terms of maybe reminding people exactly, like obviously the late winner just about keeps Ireland in contention, but overall, given as you've outlined already, it will require a monumental win against a very good team. It doesn't necessarily change the picture that much, and maybe then the focus starts moving on to whatever would be in a potential playoff.
Yeah, I mean, Katie McCabe was up this morning as well, and she said, look, there's no point in worrying about the fourth goal. You worry about the first goal. Just get the first and see where it takes you. I think if Ireland win tomorrow night, it's important. Any result, even if they don't get that 4-goal win, which does look unlikely, it's important to I think play well and beat like a real decent team. These are a common team. I think we'll look back on this Slovenia team in a couple of years and maybe just recognize that maybe there was that little bit of complacency generally from everybody, onlookers and players and supporters like that, because we had cruised through League B the last time, that it would be the same again. But this is definitely a stronger group. And as Rachel says, these countries they're getting better quickly. And they've got good players and they're very well organized and they're very well prepared. And they're fit. I thought Turkey were good on Friday. They just wilted towards the end. Slovenia won't wilt in that way. They're not going to run out of gas, I don't think, in the same way. So look, it's a tall order. But if Ireland, let's say they win 1-0, they finish the campaign having won 5 or 6 matches. That's not a bad return. They head for a playoff, a promotion relegation playoff against one of the League A third place teams in the autumn. So at the moment, this could change depending on how matches go tomorrow. But that would be Iceland, Austria, Portugal, or Italy. So it means you got a 2-legged playoff against a high quality team in the autumn. All those teams are ranked inside the world's top 20. I don't think that will do this Ireland team any harm at all. They are still they're in transition a little bit. I think they could do with an extra couple of meaningful competitive matches. And even if they don't win that playoff, they'll still stay in League B. That's okay. Because they finished in the top 3 of their Nations League group, they're guaranteed a place in the playoffs in World Cup qualification. It just means that you wouldn't be seeded. If you don't get promoted to League A, you won't be seeded. So you'd have a tougher playoff potentially, but you do have that safety net. So look, there's definitely reason to be positive here. I just think longer term, it's important for us to see a cohesive, strong Irish performance tomorrow, just to kind of show people that Carla Ward's messages are being taken on board, things are moving in the right direction. I think there's probably still question marks about that, to be quite honest, because as Rachel alluded to, like there's spells and passages of winning games where we're seeing things work and knit together, but just not enough, not over an entire half or even a good hour of a game. So that is an important step for them to make, and it's an opportunity for them to take that tomorrow, even if they don't get the 4 goals. Just a good, strong performance and a win.
Yeah, and that Slovenia game, just as a reminder, it's live on RTÉ2 and RTÉ Player from 5:30 on Tuesday with live commentary on 2FM's Game On, plus a live blog on rte.ie/sport. And Slovenia going into the game off a 2-0 win against Greece with Kramshar and Prashnikar scoring both goals, one in each half. And I suppose going back to what Anthony just said there, Rachel, in terms of the wider context, maybe it would be quite unrealistic, although you never know in football to go and get the number of goals that you need to do against a team of that quality. But in terms of the wider context, and I suppose Carla Ward trying to build towards the road to 2027, what do you want to see tomorrow?
I think probably what Anthony was saying. I just think a good performance, a good win, and if we don't get the 4-0 win, and like you said, if we don't get the playoff win, it's another chance for our group of 4 where we can play a bit of football, where we're not just defending for near enough to 90 minutes like we've seen the last time in Group A. So I think maybe if Carla's looking at it logically, she might see positives in both sides. Obviously, we want to go up to League A. It's probably what we want to do by beating Slovenia 4-0. But like Anthony was saying, we haven't shown any evidence where we're going to score 4 goals against a really tough team. It's probably not going to happen. And then if we do get the playoff, they're really tough teams again, and it's over 2 legs. So, look, again, not impossible, but obviously with the evidence shown the last few games, it's maybe, not the most realistic route for us at the moment. So I just think a good performance tomorrow. If we can get a win, all the better. But I definitely think if we do end up in Group B again, where it's, work on the stuff that she's trying to work on, and she's saying that we want to play more football, more attacking, prettier football, and that might be a better chance to work on that and get that side of our game right, because we know we can defend. We've played against top nations, and like we played France last year, beating them, and we can work on that defensive style. That's kind of within us, but it's more the attacking style that we've not had so much of in the past. So, if you're looking at a real long-term game, possibly staying in Group B where we can work on that side of our game might be the best option.
Yeah, and in terms of depth, yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, sorry, just to add to Rachel's point there, because I was just looking at the age profile of the squad, like over half, 52% of the squad will be in their 30s by the time the World Cup qualifiers start. So again, like, you think if the next Nations League is going to be in League B, it's just a kinder breeding ground for younger players. Like, we do have young players coming through, some good players like Jesse Stapleton and Abby Larkin is still only 19, 20. It's just, it's a little more forgiving. So just if you're thinking towards the Euros, like the 2029 Euros, staying in League B might actually be of benefit. It's just not as ruthlessly difficult.
Yeah, because again, it comes down to a question of trying to grow depth as well, and that might be the level where it helps. I know, for example, right back is an area you feel you'd love to see maybe more options kind of opening up to play in that position who might be natural in the role.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the squad we have now, there's no kind of out and out natural right full within that squad. We have Aoife Mannion playing there the last few games, but I think she's more of a centre half. She doesn't really have the characteristics of a right full. And you can see, the attacking threat that we get through Katie, who is that, a natural, say, winger or fullback where she can, get up the pitch quickly with the ball. But we don't really have that on the right side. And when we do, our defending as well, if we get in behind the likes of Aoife Mannion or even Anna Patton, where they probably don't have that pace to make it back if they are beaten out with a ball through with our back line. So it's probably an area where we're struggling. It's possibly an area they might target now tomorrow. But look, we are missing the likes of, say, Jamie Finn, who is that natural right back where she's really quick and get up the pitch, can get back to the pitches quickly. So it's an area where we are struggling at the moment. We don't have a lot of options. It's probably strange where you have, a lot of left-sided options where it's usually the opposite, where you're struggling to get a left foot instead of a right footer. But the likes of Jamie Finn or even a Jessu, and they're not too far back from returning from injury. I know Jamie Finn was playing a full 90 minutes for the Birmingham under-19s, I think it was. So she's not too far back. Obviously, just time an issue now, end of the season, where she's missing an opportunity now for game time. And Jessu was hopefully back soon enough. So by the time, look, if we do get a playoff in October, the two of them should be back fit, and we probably have more options then. And look, both are still young as well, so it definitely one for the future for us as well.
Yeah, and I suppose the final point on tomorrow's game, Anthony, which would be just in and around the venue itself, Páirc Uí Chaoimh, 18,000 the last time. Very many happy memories from the France game, and another opportunity to maybe kind of try and build a kind of connection with that part of the country in terms of like match going fans, but also I suppose trying to cement that sort of positive feeling around that venue as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great venue, and it was brilliant last year. And Katie McCabe and Carla Ward both referenced it this morning, just walking around the city. Katie was talking about, the team walk through Cork and, bank holiday weekend as well. Good weather, adding to the feel good vibes, but getting lots of positivity from people and good luck messages. I think, it was over 18,000 last July. I'd say there's around 10,000 tickets, I think, shifted for this. So it's not going to be as high, but it'll be loud, and they'll certainly get a good vocal partisan backing. But it's just a nice novelty to come down here and give fans from another part of the country a chance to see the team.
Yeah, for sure. And you'll be back in action fairly soon, Rachel. I know you've Sligo Rovers in the All-Ireland Cup, but then what's waiting, and Sligo again in 2 weeks, but between that, you've Athlone Town as well, your big title rivals on the horizon as well. So when does the prep for Athlone starts? I know, like, generally, when as teams you do, like, I suppose a Shelbourne or any other team, it's always the mantra of take it a game at a time, but is there a point where the thoughts of Athlone will start a bit early, given how good they are and how close you are to them in the table?
Yeah, look, to be honest, it's probably already started for me anyway. I know, the likes of Pearl and the older players probably think ahead a bit more than the younger ones do. But look, we obviously have Sligo on Saturday, so that's the one we're going to prepare for in training this week. But I think if you are, you have to just be realistic, and our 3 points that were up for grabs against Athlone are huge for us. So mentally, you're kind of thinking about that game as well. We know how tough it's going to be. They're on a really good run, but so are we. So look, we'll obviously prepare and training this week for Sligo, but mentally we are wanting to go into that Athlone game in good form. So that starts with Sligo, but mentally, yeah, you'll be thinking about these games probably a lot more than, I know it's an all-Ireland game. We have made changes in the past, but with the break in last week, I don't know if he might go with the starting 11 where he plans to play against Athlone and get that game time into our legs, because we've obviously had the week off. So look, it's going to be really big game for us, but yeah, Sligo first, but mentally we are preparing for Athlone as well.
Yeah, busy few weeks to come, but of course, like everyone else, I suppose we'll all be watching Ireland v Slovenia tomorrow. Live RTÉ2, RTÉ Player from 5:30, with live commentary on 2FM's Game On, of course, a live blog on rte.ie/sport. All right, so that is Rachel Graham and Anthony Pyne there speaking ahead of tomorrow's game against Slovenia. Now we're going to turn our attention to the Men's League of Ireland, and first off, Shamrock Rovers and Galway United, who drew 0-0. And Alan, I suppose in terms of the wider context of this game, not the ideal result for Shamrock Rovers, but given that the rest of the chasing pack all stumbled at the same time, and they still have this massive cushion.
Yeah, massive cushion, and it's been a really good opening half of the season, if you like, for Shamrock Rovers, sitting at the top where they want to be. And if you look at, I suppose, the form as well, and Richie would probably be able to tell us better, they've been known for the slow starts, but I don't think this year has been as slow as previous starts. And you look at the form that they're in now, I just think it looks ominous for the rest of the team. They'll be disappointed to draw 0-0 against Galway. Now, they dominated the game in terms of possession and shots, as you would expect. This Galway team, though, can be kind of difficult and resilient, if you like, a tough team to break down. So I say John Caulfield was probably a lot happier with the point than Stephen Bradley was. Interesting for me, though, off the back of the game, and when you think of even the last 6 matches, they've won 5, drawn 1, even the last 8, I think they're the form team with Bowes. Certainly in the second series of games, Shamrock Rovers. But the interesting thing that came out of it for me, and we're on about like managers and PSG and not letting up and creating a culture, but the first thing Stephen Bradley was doing was critical of Josh Honohan and his performance. And it was almost like as if, yeah, you're doing really well, Josh, you've been called into the Irish team, but this is your bread and butter, and we won't kind of allow you to drop your standards here at Shamrock Rovers. And to be fair to Josh, from what I can see from the outside, again, as I said, Richie will know more, but from what I can see at the outside, just it seems to be a very quiet, humble, hard-working lad. And you can see that in his performances. But already you can see Stephen Bradley earmarking that, look, even though you're in the Irish squad, you still do your stuff here on a Friday night for us. So that was interesting. And it was almost, I often think when managers do that, it's not just sending a message to Josh, it's almost sending a message to all the other players in the squad as well, that you're not allowing anybody to get too big for their boots. And I think that was probably the reason behind it also. So even though he did that, I'm sure Stephen Bradley is over the moon with certainly the recent run of form that they've had in terms of picking up the amount of wins they have, and also sitting pretty at the halfway stage. He'll be over the moon with that.
Yeah, as Stephen Bradley said about Josh Honohan, who was subbed off in 59 minutes. He said he was awful. That's the worst I've seen Josh. That's the worst I've ever seen him. I've watched him for Cork, obviously, before we signed him. We signed him here. It's not nice, but he's been brilliant for us. He's obviously got his call up and deserved it. He's doing great. Well done. But tonight he was a million miles off what he has been in every aspect, and it's not good enough. It's not good enough for us. It's not good enough for Ireland. I'm sure it's not good enough for anyone. And so a lot of not good enoughs there. But Richie, you've been in that dressing room, as you said, many a time. There's element, as Alan said, of just keeping Josh Honohan grounded, but also like when Stephen maybe is making those very rare kind of critical comments, when do you sort of hear, is it through social media? Like how does it filter back to you, and what's the general reaction like within a squad?
Yeah, normally I'm sure all the lads probably found out before I even got to a newspaper or journalist or anything like that, because I'm sure when Stephen came in straight after the game, or maybe even at half time, I'm sure he probably earmarked at half time, like come on, get your finger out here, you're not doing good enough. But I don't really like the public side of it, coming out and doing it. For me, listen, I understand doing that if you have a type of player who is a big time Charlie, who doesn't come into training on time, doesn't work hard, and is kind of going through the motions. But Josh is anything but that. He's always one of the first ones into training. Anything he gets asked to do in the gym, he does it. On the pitch, he works tirelessly hard, and his performances have been really good. For a young lad like Josh, after getting his first international call-up, I'm sure this last probably 10 days that I'm in a bit of a whirlwind from. His emotions are probably all over the place. So for him to have a little bit of a dip in performance, that can be natural as well. So for Stephen to come out and he hammered him, to be fair, he did. I don't really like that. Listen, you can do that in-house. You tell him what you think. But for me, you have a player who gives you absolutely everything, who works really hard, and who's not this big time Charlie who thinks he's bigger and better than the team. I don't think you need to do that with a player like him. So yeah, look, it's a little bit disappointing to see that, because Josh has been absolutely incredible for him, and he will be going forward as well. And as I said, everybody can have a little dip in performance, and Josh was just unlucky to have it at that time, because he's been really, really consistent in all his performances since he's been at Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, but is it grand if, say, Stephen has said the exact same thing within the dressing room, and then, you know, maybe if he is coming out and saying something along those lines quite bluntly, that maybe it's not even aimed at Honohan, but it's actually aimed generally across the entire team, but he's just using sort of one player as a way to sort of remind his players that, you know, look, you have to keep standards up, etc.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But like that, all the players are in the dressing room, so they know exactly what's after being said. So realistically, you don't need to say it in a public sense. You don't. I know the type of person that Josh is. He would be probably the hardest on himself out of anybody. So to have somebody else come out and hammer it publicly, I don't think it's needed. Like me personally, if I had a bad game, I'd be so disappointed in myself, not just on the night or the day after. It would linger until the next game, until you could get it out of your system. So when someone comes over the top of that and hammers it again, you're kind of like, I don't need this, because I'm hard enough on myself. And that's the type of player that Josh is. So listen, I understand sometimes if you have a young player and they're coming in and they're flash hardy, they think, I'm going to get a move to the Premier League and I'm after getting me first international call up, I'm doing great, and you think, you know what, I need to take this lad down a peg or two. I understand that, but Josh is not that type of person. Josh is really hard working. He's really humble. He comes from a good family. So yeah, I don't understand. I don't. But that's his management style, and he can do whatever he pleases.
Yeah, and the other thing as well that Stephen Bradley did mention was the signing of John McGovern from Dungannon Swift, so the former Down GAA player, scored quite a few goals up in the Northern Irish League, and Stephen said he fits the group, has a good age profile, and we really like what he's about, so we waited and now we got it done. I don't think out-and-out poachers can play in this team, as silly as that sounds. I don't think they can. There's so much more we ask of our forwards to do and be involved in. So John isn't just an out-and-out goal scorer. If you watch him, he's got a bit of everything. He's someone we really like, and he's a really good person, and we can't wait to get working with him. And Richie, I mean, even talking last week, it's almost word for word what you said about the type of strikers that can thrive within a Shamrock Rovers system.
Yeah, look, for him who's at the signing for Shamrock Rovers, it's a great signing for him first and foremost. Shamrock Rovers are the best club in the country, let's be realistic. They've the best facilities, and he has the best players playing with him as well. So for him, he's going to have the likes of Graham Burke, Jack Bourne supplying crosses, through ball. So it's a great environment for him to go in and thrive in. The only thing I'll say is he has so much competition up there. He has Aaron Green, who's been in great form this season. He has Rory Gaffney, who anytime he's called upon does really well. And for me, Michael Noonan, I think Michael's arguably probably the best striker in the league, in my opinion. I think anytime I've ever seen him play for a 16-year-old, he plays like a real man with maturity. He holds the ball up well, he links the play, he scores goals, and he runs in behind. So he has every single attribute Michael does. So for the new player coming in, it's going to be really hard first and foremost for him to get into the side. But if and when he does, he's going to have lots of players there that can create lots of things from him. Listen, Shamrock Rovers are known for scoring goals. They're the highest scorers in the league for the last probably 5 or 6 years in a row. So he's going to get opportunities. So it's just going to be down to him to take them.
Yeah, and then the adjustment as well, Alan, from going from the Northern Irish League to the League of Ireland. How difficult is it? I know you had your time in Portadown in 2011. How did you find the adjustment vis-a-vis one league to the other?
Yeah, it can be tricky, even though it's only kind of up the road, but it can be tricky in terms of different, I suppose, cultures. When I went, it was around the time of, they were still part-time, whereas the professionalism was taken off long before it had up there, down here. So that was the adjustment that I found kind of difficult. But I'm sure, as I said, the environment that he's coming into McGovern now, that'll be top-notch with Shamrock Rovers. So the players that he's going to play with, as Richie outlined, like it's a massive jump from him. No disrespect to Dungannon Swifts, but it's a massive jump from Dungannon to Shamrock Rovers. We saw what Shamrock Rovers did to the team up the north, obviously last year as well in Europe, and absolutely dismantled them. So I think the gap is fairly big down here compared to up the north. It certainly was in my time, and I think it's as big now, if not bigger. So it'll be a big jump for him, but they would have watched him, they would have looked at him. I think as well, when you look at Shamrock Rovers, it's not just about signing an individual. And as Richie said, the competition, it's not about maybe him playing every week. It's the amount of competitions that they're in, Europe to come as well, and rotating the squad, trying to get players. And it's one thing you see with Stephen Bradley, like it's rare that you see the same 11 play week in, week out, because they have so many good players that even when you're bringing lads on off the bench, like for like substitutions, which is rare around the other teams, just goes to quality to possess. I'd often go up to Towell and I always sit in the same spot when I go up, and you'd be behind the dugout and you'd see as much quality sitting behind the dugout, never mind in the dugout or what's on the pitch. So it just goes to show the resources they're working off on a different level to the other teams. And McGovern, as I said, will only strengthen that as well.
Yeah, and from the other side of it, Alan, just in terms of Galway as well, they seem to have steadied the ship after a little bit of a poor run win over Cork last week. Obviously getting a really good result in Tala as well in terms of getting a draw. Interestingly, the goalkeeper position as well, they seem to have switched it back again. Evan Watts has been in the last couple of games, Brendan Clark back on the bench. So what have you made of their first part of the season, how happy they might be?
Yeah, I think John will probably be a little bit disappointed with the drop off, because the early part of the season they were obviously up in those kind of European places and doing very, very well. Now, I think he's done a great job since he's gone in there. John Caulfield and Ollie Horgan, I think they've done very, very well. But as I said, the drop off would have concerned them, and at one stage there they were obviously languishing down around 8, and we all think it's going to be Sligo and Cork is going to be fighting it out obviously for the relegation spots, but you don't want to be dragged down into that. But as you said, the win last week helped them get out of that kind of bit of a mire, get them back in the mix in terms of the other teams fighting for the European places, and that's where they will see themselves. I never see Galway as a team that are going to challenge for the league, and that's no disrespect to them, but we already outlined the qualities that Shamrock Rovers have. You look at St. Pat's, Bohemians, all them things I think are better teams than Galway, even Derry City. But I do think they're in the mix to be challenging for the European places. And I'm sure that's where John Caulfield sees them as well. So that little bit of downturn would have concerned them a little bit. But now that they've picked up, is it 4 points in the last 6, going away to Tala as well and picking up the point, it seems as though they've just kind of wrestled back the initiative from that downturn. As I said, sitting on 24 points at the midway point, they're only 6 off Bohemians. And as I said, they would see themselves as challenging for those European places. And I think they're good enough to challenge for them as well, if they can pick up where they left off, obviously, in the last couple of weeks when the league resumes in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Bohemians third at the moment. Dale Rooney's penalty in the second minute, leading them to a 1-0 win over Derry City. And I suppose first off, in terms of James Clark's performance, Richie seems to have grown in prominence in the last wee while, and obviously played a part in terms of the penalty being won as well.
Yeah, he done really well on the night. He did. It's a hard position for him to play, because he probably prefers to play a little bit deeper as a midfielder. He's kind of playing as the false 9 now from I was there against at the event against Shelbourne, and Bohemians played Shelbourne, and he was really quiet in the first half. He kind of couldn't get the grips with the game, had to play the position. Then in the second half he was incredible, and he's kind of taken that form since then on, which has been great. Bohemians, they're kind of all or nothing at the moment, aren't they? I don't think they've drawn a game still.
No.
9 wins, 7 losses.
No, they're allergic to draws, it looks like.
It's crazy, it is. But listen, Bohemians are brilliant to watch, they are, because like that, as I said, they're kind of all or nothing at the moment. The penalty for me is a little bit harsh, it is. I know Connolly kind of does move his arm out a little bit. It's kind of a bit of a natural reaction when the ball gets struck. The arm does come out a little bit. So they go and score the penalty there. Rooney's penalties this season, he's had a few, and they've been really, really of good quality. For me, Derry were really poor. They had no intensity in their play, especially in the first half. Everything was really slow. And then even turning into substitutions at half time. I'm not sure whether Michael Duffy was injured or whatnot. But he's been their star player this season by a country mile. So you would have liked him to think that it wasn't based on a performance level, because if you want to get back into a game, especially down in Dalymount, Michael Duffy's going to be the man to do it for you. So they came out in the second half and they kind of huffed and puffed a little bit. Thomas had a really good volley. Graham cleared it off the line with a great block he did. But other than that, Derry were really poor on the night, and Bohemians were full value for the win. And as I said, they've been really good to watch. And if they win their game in hand, they're 3 points off Shamrock Rovers. I'm sure everybody, all the neutrals anyway, they'd love to see a battle between Shamrock Rovers and Bohemians for the league title. especially then if it comes down to an all or nothing game between them two. I'm sure the atmosphere, they probably look to switch to the Aviva again, something like that, because it'd get bums on seats. So listen, for Bohemians to be where they are at the moment, especially after the start that they had to the season, because I was really concerned about them at the start of the season. I think if they didn't get that win up in Tallaght, and they had obviously they were getting beat 2-0 at half time, build off at half time. Alan Reynolds was under a lot of pressure, he was. And I think if Shamrock Rovers had came out and turned the screw a little bit, I think he could have been gone after the game. But since then, they've gone just to a new level, and they've been absolutely incredible. And listen, sometimes it does take that little bit of time for it to click, and it most definitely has clicked up in Delap now. And it's brilliant for them, it is. And the players have responded really well to anything he's asked of them. And even the fans, as I said, I was in Delap, I was for a couple of games this season, and the atmosphere is incredible. Genuinely, it really is. The atmosphere is bouncing. Even after the games, they're all singing, twist and shout, and it brings a little smile to face, because that's what you want. You want the league to be bouncing, and for the fans to be feeding off that, because word of mouth spreads and more people start coming, and that's exactly what we want for this league.
Yeah, twist or shout, feed from desire, Seven Nation Army, which will take your pick. Bowes, interestingly though, second from bottom for chance conversion, just above Shells this year. So that's one area they do need to work on. And in terms of James Clark, it took until the 14th game of the season for him to play at least 70 minutes in a match. But since then, the 4 games in a row now, he's played at least 70 minutes, went off on 73 against Derry, and then Colin Whelan came on. And interestingly, the Moose was completely unused. But from the Derry point of view, Alan, obviously, they were on a good run at one point. Then they had that, I suppose, that sour defeat at Shamrock Rovers at home late on, and you would have thought there would be a bit of a response. Nothing really came, even in game.
No, Derry I seen a lot of Derry at the start, and I was so disappointed with them. I really was, Raf. I seen them in Tolga, I seen them in the showgrounds against Sligo Rovers, and they were just so poor. I was expecting a lot more from them, especially when you think of the squad that Tiernan Lynch has inherited. It was a team that basically should have won the league last year, and he's obviously brought in a couple of lads as well. So he walked into a good job in terms of a good squad and good players, and the start was poor enough. Then, as you say, they went on a really good run. They seem to be back kind of again in that kind of inconsistent patch as well. So maybe the break has come at a good time for them, and just to kind of regroup, reset, and get themselves going again in the second part of the season. But we touched on the likes of Galway there, who I feel as though maybe realistically are the ones challenging for European places. I see Derry that should be in the mix for challenging for a league with the resources and the budget that they have. And as I said, you look at Rory Higgins the last couple of years, they were the ones fighting it out with Shamrock Rovers. Now, it wasn't much of a fight, really and truly, but they were the ones that were closest to them. So I think Tiernan Lynch, I think they should be up challenging. And you might think, well, it's only his first season and all, but he's walked into a really good job, Raf. So to go away from home again, lose. I know Robbie Benson was sent off late on when they were probably chasing the game, but Bohemians, tough place to go. And as Richie outlined, they've got themselves going now. And the second series of games, they've been very, very good, Bose. I go down to Delap a fair bit, to be fair. So I've seen a lot of them this year. And I was in Tallaght the day that Richie talks about with Shamrock Rovers. And Alan Reynolds was gone after that match. I really believe that. He was done. Like, he really was. So the transformation since that has been incredible. And there's been a couple of late wins as well. I was at the game against Pats. Sean Grennan popped up with the late goals as well. So it happened, I think, down in Galway as well. There's been late goals. But they certainly have their season up and running now. Couple of players as well, I think you should point out. Obviously, you're on about young Clark. An area for improvement certainly is the centre forward. They've no real centre forward, and that's a problem. They've only scored 21 goals, which is the lowest in the league with a couple of other teams. Waterford have scored 20, but bar that, there's 3 or 4 teams on 21. So that's something that Alan Reynolds, I think, will have to improve if they're to challenge Shamrock Rovers in the second part of the season. But I think Dawson Devoy has been outstanding for them as well. And sometimes we look at captains and lads that kind of are vocal and lead kind of by actions in terms of roaring and shouting or getting stuck into players. He does it in a way where he gets on the ball and is brave and courageous and gets them playing and always wants to receive it as well. I'm a big fan of Dawson Devoy. Grehan as well, I think, has been absolutely outstanding for them. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him in terms of the loan spell as well. So I'm not sure if he's staying on. They'll be desperate to keep him on because I think he's probably been the best centre half in the league as well. Certainly the second round of games, he's been outstanding. So I think it's certainly turned for Bohemians and Alan Reynolds. Whether they're good enough to challenge Shamrock Rovers remains to be seen. But as Richie says, if that was the case and that's what we have to look forward to in the second part of the season, it'll be absolutely great viewing.
Yeah, and then Cork City and Shells drew 1-1. Shawnee Maguire leaping like a salmon to get his head on the ball, 57 minutes, and then Ali Coote with a brilliant individual goal from outside the box to get Shells level. But Alan, just in terms of the Cork City point of view, obviously before the game it was confirmed that David Meyler is going to be coming in as assistant, not starting until after the break. But he has sort of experience working sort of at youth level with Hull and then the Ireland under-17, so not too dissimilar to Jared Nash in a certain way. But then when you look at what they need to work on, obviously getting a point against Shells is a real positive. But the worrying stat that they've led 11 times this year but only won twice, drawn 5 and lost 4. That's an obvious area for Nash, but also David Meyler once he's actually starting working as well to sort of try and drill into their players.
Yeah, 100%, Raf. And I think obviously it's a good appointment, David Meyler, with the pedigree that he has as well. And it's great to see more and more lads with that pedigree getting themselves involved in the league in terms of the profile of the league as well. So I think it's a good appointment. I was surprised Tim I thought he would have eventually been sacked if things were going the way they were. I was surprised he walked away. But now to have Jernash, who has a good pedigree as well. So I think that duo should do well. But we spoke about Tyrone Lynch walking into a really good squad. I don't think that's the case with these two. And that's no disrespect to the Cork players, but it's a limited bunch. Bar Maguire, who has the star quality. I think Rory Keaton would have been a big plus for them as well. But of course, he's out injured for the season. So I think you spoke there about in terms of what they need to work on. I think with all these teams, especially the ones down the bottom, and you're down the bottom for a reason, because not only are you losing matches, but you're conceding goals. And they've conceded 31 goals. And that's, I think, obviously to have Maguire to try and fire them to points, but certainly I think it starts from your foundations at the back and trying to keep clean sheets and build from there. So I think that's the areas where he will be working on in trying to obviously get the team up to some sort of consistency that they can feel as though they're in a game, and then maybe use Maguire's quality to try and go on and win from there. But certainly when you look at the league table and they're sitting on 13 points now, Sligo Rovers on 12, there's a big gap then to Waterford. So I think the priority for Cork is to try and finish above Sligo and get themselves maybe into that playoff place and take their chances in the playoff. And think by that stage, by the time it comes round, Jernash and David Meyler will be in the door maybe 3-4 months by that stage, that they will have some sort of kind of handle on things, that they can feel as though they could be the first division team to maintain Premier Division status. That's the best I see for them at the moment.
Yeah, and then on the flip side for Shells, Richie, looking across the game itself, it didn't look like they really got going. Obviously, the Ali Coote thing sort of kind of got them out of jail in a certain sense, of brilliant goal. But there was the reports at half time of Damien Duff not just given the hairdryer treatment, but it was more like a blowtorch was being blown into the face of the players. But it was definitely much needed. Now, he didn't really talk about it afterwards, but it seemed like they definitely needed a bit of a rocket.
It's mad because I've watched Shells a lot this season. And they start every game so slow. Like the one at Delap, they started really slow. The one up in Towell, they started really slow. Nearly every single game I've watched, they've started so slow. And it's like they're waiting for a reaction from the manager to do something like that, to give them the hairdryer treatment. You see a couple of games, he's taking lads off after a half an hour. He's taking a couple of lads off at half time. And it's like they're always a little bit nervous in their play, where they're kind of waiting to get to half time to see what happens. And it's crazy. Like, I'm really looking to see where the leaders are in that team. Obviously, the likes of Paddy Barrett, he's been out for a while, which probably would be one of their main leaders. But other than him, I'm looking and I'm thinking, who's the leader there? Who's grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck? You know, as a player, in the first 10 minutes, if you started the game well or not. And if you don't, you need to grab your teammates by the scruff of the neck and be like, right, come on, let's go here, let's go. So we haven't started the game good enough here. You might need someone to go down, let the physio come on for a couple of minutes and get around your teammates. But I never really see that with them. It's like they're always waiting on the manager to do something, to make a decision and to change things up, where sometimes it has to be on pitch and it has to be player-led. Obviously, the video done the rounds, didn't it, with Damien giving them the hairdryer treatment. And it was needed, it was, and it's been needed a couple of times this season. But it's a little bit disappointing that they're always waiting for him to do something. They have a lot of players in there who they've won leagues now. They have, so they know what it takes to go and do it, and they just haven't been starting games with the right intensity, and it's been really disappointing for them. I actually think that the break has come at a really, really good time for Shelbourne, because as we see, Paddy Barrett came on in the game, and they might get another couple of lads back from injury in the time leading up to the next game with the 2-week break that we have. So it could have come at a really good time. They've only 2 wins in the last 10 games, and for the reigning champions, it's not really good enough. It's not. So they'll be looking for a real kickstart when they come back, and hopefully they can put a little bit more of a title challenge, because it'll make it a lot more interesting if they're up there and thereabouts.
Yeah, and then Waterford 2, Drogheda 2, and I suppose Richie on this one, from the Waterford point of view, at least it's Padraig Hammond who's like brilliant in this game, but then also at the other end, they had a susceptibility to defending corners as well, and that's where the 2 Drogheda goals came from.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's Warren Davis who scores the header. A little bit similar to Shonny Maguire scoring for Cork against Shells. Be so disappointed. One of the smallest players on the pitch scoring. He doesn't even really jump for the header. Listen, Shonny's header is brilliant. He gets up and he gets over Mark Coyle. It's a great header, but Warren Davis just kind of holds the lad and nods it in. So listen, Waterford will be, John Coleman especially, he'll be really disappointed with that. He will. And then conceding so late, it's so disappointing. Especially Waterford have been on a great run. And listen, it's not the worst result in the world for Waterford, but if they had got another win leading into the break, their tails would have really been up, and because they have been in really good form since John has come in. But it's kind of typical Drogheda style, isn't it? They never stop fighting. Again, you would think them being in second place, Waterford down around relegation zone, that Drogheda would go there and dominate. But Waterford had, I think, 70% possession of the ball. As I said, that's just typical Drogheda, isn't it? They're really comfortable defending in a low block. Their centre halves never really push up the pitch. They always defend their box really well. And then obviously Conor Keeley gets them out of jail. He's done really well this year. He obviously went to Pats, it didn't really work out, but this season he's done really well for Drogheda. And yeah, he got them out of jail. I heard the Drogheda manager speaking after the game, and he was saying that they felt the draw was a fair result, although they probably could have had a couple more goals in the first half. So yeah, look, I think the draw was a fair result overall.
Yeah, I suppose from a Drogheda point of view, Alan, like it probably just shows how far they've come. That you can still kind of critique aspects of their performance. They're sitting second. I think they were 9th at this stage last season, so it's been a remarkable rise. And yet, I'm sure Kevin Doherty still has things where he feels like we actually could have done better.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's the standard that's been set and raised there, I suppose, over time, but certainly since last year, when you look at the success that they had the second part of the season, winning the cup, and they've carried on now that they're all full-time as well. So even though everybody still looks at them second in the table as a surprise, and it is a surprise that they're second, Kevin will feel as though we're there because we're playing really well and we've won enough matches and we've done well. So that's the outlook that he will have. Now, the second part, they've only lost 3 games, Raf. So I think the problem for them in terms of, I never seen them like anybody as title contenders, and I don't think they will be. But if he can maintain it and get themselves into Europe, it will be a phenomenal achievement. It really will, because we spoke at the top of the show just about resources and stuff. They have the lowest in the league with probably Sligo Rovers when you look at budget-wise. And when you think of what they're achieving up there and carrying on from where he left off last year to be sitting second in the table, it's absolutely phenomenal job that Kevin is doing. So I think if he can maintain that and get himself into the European positions, I think that will be an unbelievable job. The problem for them now, it's in one sense, I suppose it's good for them because we don't see them really as being up there, but they have drawn 9 matches, and that's the most in the league along with Shelbourne. So despite the fact they've only lost 3, it's not like they're winning loads either. They've won 7, but they've drawn 9. Now they're just chipping away on the table and keeps a point tacking up on the board in terms of their points tally. But I think the second part of the season now, the big challenge for them is kind of maintain the first half of what they've done so far, because to be sitting second after 19 games is a phenomenal return. It really is, and he's done a great job, Kevin.
Yeah, and with the, I suppose, the spectre of European football there, but it's kind of interesting as well because they had a statement. Yeah. This is where the multi-club ownership complications can sort of come in. They said Drogheda United Football Club can confirm that it has been engaged in ongoing discussions with UEFA in recent months regarding a regulatory matter that has now arisen following Silkeborg IF, and this is a Danish club, his qualification for the UEFA Conference League qualifiers. As supporters will know, Silkeborg IF is also part of the Trivela ownership structure, which includes Drogheda United, also Walsall as well as part of that. UEFA's regulations regarding multi-club ownership and participation in UEFA club competitions require careful consideration, and the club has been working proactively with the relevant authorities. At this time, due to the confidential and ongoing nature of the process, Drogheda United is unable to provide further comment. However, the club remains committed to transparency and will provide updates as soon as there are any significant developments to share. We appreciate the continued support and understanding of our fans, partners, and wider community. So that's more of a watch this space at this moment in time. Now, they're not the only club that have had there's Nottingham Forest's owner also owns Olympiacos. There's Manchester United and Nice. There's all these kind of examples. So we'll see how that one pans out. But St. Pat's 1-0 winners away to Sligo Rovers. So that was the last of the games. Aidan Keena with a 10th minute penalty. And Richie, I suppose, looking at this one, probably the more important aspect, other than the 3 points for Pats, will be the fact they kept a clean sheet, because they had barely done that in the last few weeks. I think they conceded something like 10 in the last 4.
Yeah, that's something we touched on last Monday, wasn't it? Was the amount of goals that they were conceding. So to go away from home, especially before the break, and keep a clean sheet, Stephen Kenny, he'll be absolutely delighted with that. Sligo was kind of their own downfall, wasn't it? They gave the ball away really cheaply in their own half, and Elbazetti plays a nice ball out wide to Simon Power, and I think the lad who gives the ball away tries to make up for it with a tackle on Simon and gives away the penalty. Now listen, Aidan Keena puts the penalty away really well, but Sligo have really been struggling, haven't they? I think it's 12 points this season. It's not really good enough. Considering the players that they have, I think they actually have quite a good squad down there. And I like John Russell. I think John's a good manager as well. I know he has a really high work rate, so I'm sure he's working tirelessly hard with them. But they've been really, really disappointing this year. I know they have the likes of Elding, who's probably been the shining light for them, but he scored maybe 7 goals. Will somebody else want to come in and maybe take him now during the window? That could happen to them, because, as we said, the likes of Bohemians and Drogheda, they kind of need that goal scorer type player. So is he a player that people are going to be headhunting, thinking, you know what, Sligo look like they're going to go down anyway, so they might be able to get in and rob them. So Sligo are in a really bad position at the moment. As Alan touched on it, I think it will be them and Cork that are going to be battling it out for that playoff spot. And listen, they really need to, hopefully the break has come at a little bit of a good time for them as well, that they can regroup a little bit, because that's exactly what's needed down there. Because I love having Sligo in the league. They're brilliant there. I've always loved going down to play there. It's always a good atmosphere. The pitch is normally always really good down there, and it's always a really good game. It is. So it'd be great to see them have a little bit of turn of form for the second half of the season, because I think the first half it's not been good enough from them.
Yeah, and Alan, I suppose it's your neck of the woods in terms of Sligo, real football town. Obviously, as Richie has outlined, they're struggling at the bottom, albeit that they're not a million miles away from Cork City. There's just a point between them, so there is that little bit of hope that they can get out of there. But they've picked up only 2 points after falling behind this season, and they've fallen behind quite a lot across the campaign. So that's the lowest of any club, and only club not to win a game in that scenario either. So just how worried are you for where Sligo are at, I suppose, on and off the pitch?
Extremely, Raf, yeah. I think it's fairly bleak when you look at in terms of the stats and the points. Everything is pointing towards relegation, sadly for them. And they've been poor. They've been very poor. I've seen them in a lot of games recently, and they have been poor. Now, in fairness to John Russell, he lost the goalkeeper, McGinty. He lost Ellis Chapman, went to Shelbourne. He lost Morahan, kind of the spine of the team, really. And when you're losing players as good as that, and then you're not replacing them, I think it's been very, very difficult for John in that regard. The shining light has been young Elding. He's been absolutely outstanding, 7 goals. But if you're relying on a young fella to kind of basically grab you by the scruff of the neck and get you back into games and win you points, I don't think that speaks well of some of the other lads maybe in the squad as well. So it's been really tough for John. It's been really poor overall. You mentioned here about it's a good point you make, Raf, because I think that's been one of the biggest problems in all the games as well, even when watching them. They don't give themselves a chance in games because they're falling behind through sloppy, needless goals. And there's games they've been 2 down in a lot of cases where after only maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then they show great heart and desire to chase the game and get themselves back. But it all comes a little bit too late. The game can become false, I find, then when you're chasing games, as Richie will tell you. You need to be starting the game well and getting yourself a foothold, not falling 2 or 3 behind, and then it becomes false when you're just kind of going gung-ho chasing the match. They've conceded 34 goals as well. Defensively, they've been very, very poor. So I think it's really hard. Richie spoke about the showgrounds as well. I'm not sure in terms of, I think there's been a drop-off in terms of the crowds as well. They've only won 1 game at home all season, and that's really, really poor, because whatever about going on the road and trying to pick up points, you need to be trying to make your home place a bit of a fortress and tough to beat and difficult place for people to come. But if you've only won 1 game at home all season as well, I don't think that's great. So it's pretty bleak at the moment, Raf. It really is. there is allowances in terms of, as I said, budgets maybe, and what he's lost last year and not being able to replace that. But still, that's probably no consolation to John Russell. He'll still feel as though they should be higher up the table, and I think they should as well, a little bit higher than 12 points. But the only hope I see is that Cork are in touching distance, only a point ahead of them. And again, something like what I said about Cork, if they can just finish ahead of Cork, like what Cork feel about Sligo, and get themselves into the playoff place and take your chances in that. It's a sad thing to say at the halfway stage, but that's the only hope I see. Young Elding, it looks like Richie spoke about teams wanting him. They're banging down the door for Elding, and he's probably we might touch on it, I'm not sure, Raf, but who's been the best player so far. And I know Richie said about young Noonan has been outstanding. Warren Davis, Melia, I've seen in games, has been brilliant, but I think Elding has been absolutely outstanding, and not just in terms of the goals that he scored, but his mentality as well. He looks like a lad who's playing way above his age, and the maturity that he's shown in the games as well, and even his leadership that he's shown for playing in a poor team, but he's the one that's still dragging them back into the game and showing a great attitude. And I think teams will be banging down the door, because I've been so impressed with this kid. He's a really star, I think. And you look at one Sligo lad doing great things at the moment with Celtic and doing very well for himself, and Richie played one with Johnny Kenny, whereas you look now at young Elding, I think he could be the next. I think he's an outstanding talent.
Yeah, you've done your segue for me in terms of the players and young players of the year. So you've done the young player of the year. So your player of the year so far at the halfway point.
My player of the year so far, I would have to go for, now there's the obvious candidates and standouts in terms of Jack Byrne. I think in recent weeks has been very good. Assists. Graham Burke, I'm a huge fan of. I mentioned Dawson Devoy, and you look at this turnaround with Bohemians in their form as well. I think he's been pivotal in that, really. He's been absolutely brilliant. I'm mad about young Elding as the young player. I think Warren Davis deserves a mention as well. He's been absolutely brilliant. But I'm going to go for a player who I mentioned earlier on as well. And I think even throughout maybe the poor spell, I thought he was good as well. But certainly in the second part, the second round of matches, I think young Grehan at centre half for Bohemians been absolutely outstanding. Not just his defensive qualities on the ball, as well as passing range. And he's popped up with real important goals. So I'm going to go for him as my player of the year in the halfway point of the season, Raf.
All right. And Richie, your picks, player of the year, but also if there's a young player that's kind of stood out for you as well.
Yeah, similar to Alan, I think Elding has done really well. Warren Davis has done really well. So I think for a young player, I think the two of them have stood out probably the most. I think if Michael Noonan got a little bit more game time, he's obviously wrestling with the likes of Aaron Green and Rory Gaffney for time. I think if he got a little bit more game time, I think he will be in the conversation as well. So yeah, I'd agree with Alan on them too. No chance of giving a centre half. I don't know what Alan's on about. For me, I think Graham Burke. Honestly, he's been brilliant. Listen, Michael Duffy he was getting dirty out of a lot of trouble with his goals and assists up there. Alan touched on Dawson Devoy, really good in the second round of the games. I think if Jack Bourne had been fit from the very start of the season, his form has been incredible over the last couple of weeks as well. But for me, Graham Burke, not just his goals and assists. Raf obviously has 6 or 7 goals and probably 4 assists. So I think he's one of the highest goal involvements in the league. But it's his all-round play. Like, he picks up these pockets where defenders don't want to come out and defend, and midfielders don't want to drop back too far either. So he's always in loads of space, and he's such a clever footballer. He moves really well with the ball, and he plays the game at his tempo. Anytime I go watch him, obviously I've trained with him and played with him for the last 4 years as well, so I know what he's all about. But I think he's the best player in the league by a country mile. Genuinely do. And I know we see the likes of Josh Honohan, who's after getting called up for the international team. I think him and Jack Bourne, I think Graham Burke and Jack Bourne, I think they could step into the men's national team straight away now, especially in the form that they're in, the type of players that they are. They've been there and they've done it before. Burke, he scored the goal at international level already for Ireland. So I think if there had been a little bit more time, it would have been great to see either of them getting called in as well, because as I said, the form that they're in, I think they could step in, and they have that maturity. They've been there and they've done it. They know probably most of the players who's in the squad. It would have been nice to see one of them get included as well, but I'm sure they're off enjoying the break instead now.
Yeah.
Can I just say,
although Damien Duff doesn't believe in the concept of a break, but yeah, Alan, go on.
Start on that, honestly.
Can I just say as well, Raf, and all the things Richie said, he's right about Jack and Graham, the two best players in the league. They're outstanding. One player as well that I was due to mention, and I think he's had a brilliant first half of the season, Moses Dyer as well.
Yeah, brilliant.
Couple of games that I've seen Galway in, he was outstanding centre forward, one in Delap. He scored probably the goal of the season as well. I know we're only halfway through, but I'll be surprised if there's a better goal scored than the one he scored in Delap. And and earlier on in that game, he scored a header. That's as good a header. I know Shawnee Maguire got a good one at the weekend, but the header he got in Delap was outstanding as well. So he deserves a mention. Moses Dyer, top goal scorer in the league. I think it's 9 he has. But he was a great find for Galway, and if he can continue the goal scoring exploits in the second part, I mentioned about the European places for them, he could fire them into those places. But certainly out of all the ones we mentioned, I think we're kind of are correct, but he definitely deserves a mention as well. Moses Dyer's been brilliant.
Yeah, we'll talk about the international scene very, very briefly. Obviously, the Senegal friendly coming up, but just to lay the land of the first division. After 17 rounds of action, Dundalk are top of the table ahead of Cove Ramblers. Dundalk came from 3-2 behind at Wexford to win there late on. And then also a shout out for Kerry as well. Sixth at the minute, 21 points, just outside the playoff places. And obviously under Colin Healy at the moment, 7 points from a possible 12. That's been really good in his first few games in charge. And the only unfortunate thing for them, Ryan Kelleher will be out for a few months after sustaining an ACL injury. But turn our attentions to boys in green. Ireland v Senegal will be live on RTÉ2 and RTÉ Player from 7 o'clock on Friday, and there will be a live blog on rte.ie/sport as well. And there are changes to Hamer's squad with Seamus Coleman and Sammy Smodix out, but Andy Moran in. And from the Senegal point of view, for Liverpool fans who wanted to see Sadio Mane, he won't be there. But Liam Delap also I did want to bring up, and this is just whether he'll be worth the chase in a certain sense. He's obviously been called up to England under 21 level, but this is an extract from my colleague Ed Leahy's story on RT.ie, where this is coming from Hamer's press conference last week, where he said, we have sat with him in regards to Delap. Yeah, added the manager, just told him we would love to have him in our camp, but like I said, the focus is on the England under 21s. Hallgrimsson was then asked whether the young Ireland striker showed any interest in playing for Ireland. Well, he didn't say F off. There's a few asterisks there anyway, so that's what Hamer had to say about that. But in reality, Hallgrimsson said that despite his admiration for the player and aware of the quality that he would bring to his Republic unit, he accepts that it all comes down to the player as to where allegiances lie. I feel so, yeah. Probably you feel the same as well, said Hallgrimsson, when asked if he thought players who have such a strong link should be playing for the national team. We want the best players available, always playing first. Others might have other opinions. It is up to him. These questions you need to ask the player himself, not me. We always want the best players. So, Alan, not saying F off, is that a ringing endorsement? I don't know. But do you look at it like he's obviously a brilliant young player, but is it kind of worth the chase if, at this stage, given he has other options, and you wouldn't be surprised if England were looking at him, especially if he does move to Chelsea and that's fully confirmed. But also, when behind Harry Kane, the striker options for England aren't quite so clear cut in terms of who's right behind him.
Yeah, but even before you get to that, Raf, if he's already concentrating England or 21s, I don't think we should be going anywhere near him. You know what country you're from and what country you want to play for long before you get to under 21. And if we're chasing a lad who's playing with England or 21s, hoping that he might change his mind after that because he feels as though the pathway is blocked with the English senior team, I don't think we should be going anywhere near that. Now, in fairness to Hallgrimsson, and I think he speaks quite well in the media, but he's basically just looking at it from a point of view where he has to explore every avenue because of the limitations we have in our squad. And of course, he'd love to have Delap. But from my point of view, as an Irish man, an Irish person, I much want to see lads out on the pitch who want to play for their country, who are passionate about their country, and who know from 14, 15, 16, 17, all the way up that I'm going to play for Ireland. That's my dream. That's what I want. If Liam Delap is concentrating England or 21s, I don't think Hallgrim should be going anywhere near him, to be honest with you, Raf.
Yeah, and one of the other things that's come out in recent times, it's Caoimhín Kelleher to Brentford, it looks like, Richie. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking to Barry Murphy here, and he felt maybe like Aston Villa would be a great move. Obviously, Villa at the moment, given they missed out on Champions League, all the PSR considerations, it's unclear whether they'd have money to spend. So Brentford have moved ahead. One thing is he's definitely going to get games at least.
Yeah, look, Brentford are a great football club. I think Kelleher's an incredible goalkeeper. Anytime I've seen him play, I love his calmness. He never gets overhyped by anything. He's nice and calm in the games. he's played at one of the biggest football clubs in the world in Liverpool, and it's not phased him. So for him to go out and get a little bit more game time would be brilliant, whether that's at Brentford or elsewhere. Not to be disrespectful to Brentford, but I think he could even make another step up. I know you said the likes of Aston Villa, and I know going from Liverpool to Manchester United will never probably happen, but he's a way better keeper than Honohan as well, in my opinion. So for him, just to go out and get game time, I think will really stand to him, and not just stand to him, it'll stand to the Irish national team as well, because for him and Gavin Bazunu, they're obviously going to be battling out over the next couple of years, and if both of them are playing regular football, it's only going to help us as a nation. But just to touch on what Alan said there as well about Delap, he's dead right. They have nothing to do with him. Honestly, if he doesn't want to play for Ireland, he wants to concentrate in England, just leave him to it. We have Evan Ferguson and Troy Parrott in them positions, two extremely good players. Put all your focus into them, because they are going to be the lads who are going to forward us to success over the next number of years. So if the lad doesn't want to come here now, just leave him. Honestly, that does my head in a little bit. It does, where you see us chasing players and they're him and Han. If you don't want to play for this country, don't. That's fine. The Ireland manager needs to take a little step back and know what the Irish people want as well. I know he wants all the best players, but for us as a nation, we want lads who pulling on that green jersey, who want to be there and want to give absolutely everything for the cause. And Delap is definitely not one of them players, so just leave him.
And it's the same as well, Richie, when you look, like, he's an English lad, Raf, so leave him off. Like, his dad played for Ireland, fair enough, but he's an English lad. It's like, I know everybody goes on about the Rice thing and they're disappointed, but Rice was an English lad as well, so just leave them off.
Yeah. Anyway, as we do know for the moment, Liam Delap has not told us to F off, so we're in that weird position of uncertainty. So at least from what Hamer Hallgrimsson has said, now obviously Hamer has spoken well in the last few weeks, or at least he projects himself in a confident way, and this is kind of interesting, Alan. This will be kind of like, I suppose, the final point we'll make today in terms of the national team. But the fact that they picked Senegal as the opposition in this window, and his rationale for that is that we're preparing to be at the World Cup next summer, so we want to play non-European teams. That's a huge vote of confidence in his squad and what he potentially expects. But is it important though that he is projecting confidence in a squad where confidence has been lacking, and also confidence has been lacking within the support base as well?
Yeah, absolutely, and I suppose that's part of his job, not just in terms of the stuff that's behind the scenes with the players and what he's projecting out to them. But I think for the fans and the supporters as well, that we need to feel as though we've someone at the helm who can fire us to World Cups or campaigns, because we know it's been sadly lacking over a number of years now. So it's a tough job though, Raf. Like, when you look at the players that he's, no disrespect to the lads, but just in terms of the limits on the squad and what he's picking from, it's a tough job to get us qualified. You'd be hoping that a couple of those places that are freed up as well with us hosting, that could be an avenue that we might end up needing as well. Hopefully it won't be the case, but I'd say it might be. But I think he's done well, obviously in recent matches as well, to try and turn the thing around and get some positivity. And as you say, in the media duties, I think he does come across very well, and he comes across fairly normal and honest and realistic. And I like that about him, because he's not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes in terms of that he's coming up with this special formula that we've never seen before. He's fairly honest, and we can all see it ourselves what he's trying to do. So you can't pull the wool over people's eyes anymore, if some people thought that you could have beforehand maybe. But I certainly think anytime I hear him speaking in the media, any of the build up to the games, I think he comes across really well. I know he's having to explore those avenues of the ones we touched on with other players, and that's fine. But so far, in terms of all that I've seen and heard from him and what he's dealing with, I think he's done okay, Raf. But obviously we've a lot to come in terms of the campaign that he'd be judged on. But the game Friday, I'd like to see some young lads getting game time, the likes of Andy Moore, who I'm a big fan of when I seen him with the 21s. The likes of young lads like that, Josh Keeley, who done well, obviously out on loan late North, I'd say he could feature in these games. Even Josh Honohan, if he's calling him into the squad, give him game time. I've no issue with that whatsoever. I'd hate to think you're bringing lads in for the sake of bringing them in, but give them game time. Let us see what they're like, because I think all places are up for grabs in that squad. I don't think we've any really, well, we know we've no world-class players, but certainly in terms of any standouts that it's a given that they start every match, I don't think that's the case. I think every position is nearly up for grabs for every game that we go into. So yeah, let us see some of those new lads and see what they can do in the friendlies.
Yeah, and actually, just one last thing. Actually, just the Ireland under 17s. Obviously, the World Cup draw was made for November, which is Panama, Uzbekistan, Paraguay. Obviously, you were capped at that level yourself, and same with Graham Gartland, who we were speaking to last week. And just the opportunity of going to a World Cup will be huge. The only complication is club commitments, and when you look at some of the young talents in the league, Noonan, Ossian Vuna, already playing a lot of first team football for Shamrock Rovers, but then when it comes to October, and October 27th is when all these squads convene, and then November the tournament starts itself, and the league would still be ongoing. So there's a little complication there. Like, obviously the clubs have the final say because it's outside of a FIFA window, but for you, would you be kind of going like, these lads do need that experience? If the opportunity is there, just go for it, whatever is happening at club level?
Yeah, and it's something I suppose that hasn't really cropped up before because we haven't seen them go to a World Cup, and also with, I suppose, the if you look at the new look League of Ireland in terms of the summer football, and then we're carrying on into October, November, which is the business end. And if you have the likes of Shamrock Rovers going for a league title come the end of the season, and an FEI Cup potentially as well, would they want to release the likes of a Noonan or a Mace Amelia or any of those lads, Victor, that you said there, that's still eligible? So any of those young emerging lads. But I still think, for the greater good of the game and the development of the game, Raf, now would be a debate amongst the managers, as you say, who might not want to release them. But I certainly think in terms of the young kid himself and the benefits that he would gain from going to a World Cup, if it was that case, and featuring in a World Cup playing for your country, that can only be a positive for him going forward, that individual, hopefully going on to greater things at an international level. So it will be an interesting debate and discussion when that comes around. And I'd love to hear, obviously, Stephen Bradley's thoughts on it, or them lads, especially, as you say, because they'll be looking at it thinking we want to win the league. And for at that stage, Noonan could have another 6-7 goals. He could be in red hot form. They might not want to release him. So it's a tough one. I can see both sides of the argument, but certainly, and this is something that I've always felt with the under 21s as well. And I thought we missed the trick there with Jim Crawford's team a couple of years back when we lost in the playoff to Israel. They dropped down 3 lads from the senior squad to play in that playoff, and we had 7 or 8 that could have played, the likes of Parrott, the likes of Bazunu, these lads that were still eligible, and we never dropped them down and played them. And the benefits they would have gained from going to that European under-21 major tournament for their careers going forward would have been monumental, and we never did it. And I always feel as though we missed the trick with that. So it'll be interesting when it comes around to the under-17 one, what will happen with the likes of those lads. But I can see both sides, Raf. But I'd certainly be all for the player going to the tournament and gaining that experience for the better of his career going forward.
Yeah, well, still a few more months to go, although the fact that we're already halfway through League of Ireland season just tells you how fast the calendar goes. But anyway, that's it for this week's podcast. We'll be back next Monday, June 9th, to review Ireland v Senegal, and also look forward to the Luxembourg game. Alan, thanks very much for your time. Get some rest after all the adventures in Munich. And Richie, same to yourself as well.
Thanks for having us, Raf.
Thanks, Raf. Thank you.